An angle is what happens when two lines share the same point. There can be large angles, small angles, straight angles. Each type of angle has a different name. Here are the 4 ways that we can describe angles. Let's look at each example. So the first type of angle is acute angle. And if you look very closely, you'll see the word cute in this type of angle. So what an acute angle is an angle that is less than 90 degrees. So these are cute little tiny angles that are small. They don't open very wide. They open less than 90 degrees. So when you see an angle that is cute and tiny, not open very wide, that would be an angle that is acute. If you're confused about what 90 degrees means, right angles are exactly 90 degrees. What this means is think about the letter L, a corner of a door. That is a right angle. Most right angles are labeled in the corner with a little square, so you know that the angle is exactly 90 degrees. Any angle that is smaller than this would be acute. So there could be an angle that almost looks like it's 90 degrees, just almost there, but not quite. This angle might be 89 degrees, but it would be considered acute because it does not have the square to label that it is 90 degrees. Usually they're not going to give you angles that are this close, though. It'll probably be pretty obvious if the angles are acute angles or one of the other two. So what we have left is obtuse angles. When you say obtuse, you have to open your mouth nice and wide, like you're at the dentist. So an obtuse angle is an angle that is greater than 90 degrees. So that means it's bigger than an L. It's bigger than the corner of a door. An obtuse angle is an angle that is open nice and wide. So an angle that is bigger than 90 degrees is considered obtuse. The last type of angle is a straight angle. So a straight angle looks exactly like a line. It's 180 degrees. The only way you can tell a difference is when you have a straight angle. Try to get my line as straight as I can get it. You're going to have a little dot in the middle to show you that there is 2 lines that are meeting. If there's no dot in the middle, it's usually just the line because they look very similar. So if we take a look here, we have a list of some different degrees. So if we use what we learned earlier, if we wanted to figure out what type of angle this is, let's look back. So I'm looking at 90 degrees and I want to know if this is an obtuse, if it is an acute, or if it is a right angle. Move my notes over to help us a little bit. So 90 degrees would be an angle that is a right angle. The reason that I know this is because a right angle is 90 degrees. So I'm going to label this with an R so I know that it represents a right angle. If I take a look at the next one, it says 58. So is 58 less than 90 degrees? Exactly 90 degrees? Greater than 90 degrees? Or is it a straight angle? So I know that 58 is smaller than 90, so that means that my angle would be a cute little angle. If I look at the next one, 38 is definitely smaller than 90. It would also be acute. And then 139, that's not smaller than 90. That's larger than 90. So that means that that angle would be obtuse. When we look at the last one, yes, angles can be this small. This angle would almost look like it's completely shut because it's only 4 degrees. But that would be an acute angle, just a very, very, very small acute angle. So let's take a look at some pictures of angles and see if we can label them. These angles aren't nice and they don't tell us how many degrees they are, so we kind of have to go by how they look. So if you remember, acute angles are nice and small, they're very cute, they're tiny. Obtuse angles open nice and wide, and then a right angle looks like the corner of a door. They are usually labeled, but if they're not, you should be able to tell. They're not going to give you an angle that's like 89 degrees or 91. So if we take a look at this first angle, this angle is not open very wide. It is smaller than an L. So we kind of want to use a right angle as our guide. Is it smaller than an L? Is it an L that's kind of shut? Or is it an L that's open nice and wide? So this L looks like a book that's being closed. So this angle is going to be an acute angle. We take a look at number 4. Number 4 is open nice and wide. It's like you're taking a book, you're bending it almost all the way flat. So this angle would be an example of an obtuse angle. 5 is one that can be a little tricky. If we look at 5, it looks almost exactly similar to my example of a right angle. 5 would be an example of a right angle. So now that we've seen an example of all 3, I want you to take a look at number 6. What do you think about number 6? Is number 6 an acute, tiny little angle? Is it obtuse, nice and wide? Or is it a right angle where it looks just like an L or the corner of a door? If you said obtuse, you were correct. This angle's nice and wide. It almost looks like a straight angle, but if you look here, you can see a little bend. It's bending a tiny bit to show that it's not exactly straight. What about this angle? Number 7. If you take a look at it, is it acute and tiny? Is it nice and large? Or is it a right angle? If you said acute, you were correct. And last but not least, take a look at number 8. Is this angle acute? Is it obtuse or is it a right angle? Use the examples above to kind of help you figure it out. This would be an acute angle. When we look at shapes, a question might say, how many obtuse or right or acute angles does this shape have? So what you would need to do is you need to outline the corners. So let's take a look at this shape. And I want to figure out what type of angle this is. So if I outline the angle, is this angle nice and wide like an obtuse angle? Is it smaller than an L like an acute angle? Or does it make a perfect corner? This would be an example of an obtuse angle. So when you see a shape, you want to kind of outline the angle and you should be able to figure out what type of angle it is. So for example, when I look at this shape and I take a look at this corner, if I outline it, I can see easily that this is an acute angle. If I was unsure about this angle and I outlined it, I can see that it's almost a perfect L, but it's a little bit wider. So this is going to be an obtuse angle. So outlining them makes it a lot easier to tell. If we take a look, so let's take a look at this question. It says, if the time is 4 o'clock, what is the measure of the angle formed by the minute and the hour hand? There's no minute and hour hand on the clock. So we would have to go in and we would have to draw a minute and an hour hand. And you would easily be able to see that this angle is open nice and wide like an obtuse angle. But look at our answer choices. It doesn't say acute, it doesn't say obtuse, it doesn't say, it gives us degrees. So we can use what we know to eliminate answer choices. For example, if we look at A, it says 4 degrees. We know that 4 degrees is less than 90, so that would be an acute angle. We said that our angle that we drew was going to be obtuse, so that cannot be the right answer because that angle is too small. If we take a look at B, it says 20 degrees. 20 degrees is less than 90, so that would have to be an acute angle. That couldn't be the right answer. That would be, so if we look at B, it says 20 degrees. We know that 20 degrees is less than 90. That means that it would be an acute angle. When we looked at our clock has an obtuse angle. That can't be correct. If we look at C, C is greater than 90 degrees, but less than 180. So that means that C would represent an obtuse angle. I'm going to put a little question mark because that could be right. And then if we take a look at D, it says 180 degrees, and that is a straight angle. That would be a straight line, like from 12 to 12, between 12 and 6. So that is not the correct answer, which means the only one that represents an obtuse angle is C. So this question that looked really hard, through process of elimination, we were able to figure out which one was the correct answer. We are only going to look at one more question, and the question says, what statement could be made about the kinds of angles in these 3 polygons? When you first look at this, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know. There's so many different angles. All we have to do is label the angles, and then the question becomes way easier. So the first thing we want to do is look at our first shape. This is a rectangle. Rectangles have 4 right angles. So I'm going to go ahead and label. Okay, we got a right angle here, right angle, then another right angle, and a right angle. This pentagon is going to be a little bit harder. So we take a look at the top angle. This angle is open a little bit more than a door, so this angle is going to be obtuse. We also have another obtuse angle. Trace it out and see. Yep, that's obtuse. And these angles are congruent, which means the same. So this angle is also obtuse. And then we have 2 more obtuse angles. And obtuse. Get my marker back. There we go. Obtuse. And then our last shape, we have a trapezoid. The trapezoid has 2 acute angles at the top. And then it has 2 obtuse angles. So if you're wondering how I know where the angles are everywhere that you have a point. So if I look at where my points are in my shape, that's where I know where the angles are. So if we look at A, it says there is an equal number of obtuse, acute, and right angles. We have 4 right angles. We have more than 4 obtuse angles. So that cannot be the correct answer. So when we eliminated A, we saw that there is not an equal number of obtuse, acute, and right angles. There are more obtuse angles. Now when we look at B, there are mostly acute angles. There are 2 acute angles. That's definitely not the most. There are more obtuse angles than acute angles, and there are more right angles than acute angles. C says there is an equal number of acute and right angles. We have 2 acute angles and 4 right angles. That is incorrect. So hopefully D is right, or we made a mistake with our labeling. There are more obtuse angles than right angles. There's 4 right angles and 5, 6, 7 obtuse angles, so that would be the correct answer. So when it comes to figuring out angles, you need to label them and look very carefully. Think about the letter L. If it's bigger than an L, it is obtuse. And if it's smaller than an L, then it is a cute, tiny little angle. If it is a straight line, it would be a straight angle. And those are the four types of angles.